Ever since I was a teenager, my parents have had all these lovely roses in their garden. And there are two things I remember about learning to prune roses. Number one, cut at a 45-degree angle at a quarter inch above the node. And number two, remember to be brutal with roses. You pretty well can't kill them. You need to be brutal with them when pruning so that when they come back in fullest blossom. Now, I don't have a single green digit on my body, but I was always fascinated by biology in high school, the structure of the cell, the structure of plants, the processes by which they carry water from roots to leaves, the various adaptations they've gone through to adapt to harsh or arid conditions. The more one reflects on it, the more one can see that science is less about proving the existence of a solid, quantifiable God, which in itself defeats the purpose of an all-powerful God anyway. And it's more about seeing the patterns of life in the created world, the organic mechanisms that have evolved and are evolving to ensure an abundance of life on this earth. And moreover, the spiritual lessons we can learn from observing said patterns, what God-given life can tell us about living. Now, humanity has gone through life thinking that we're at the top of the food chain. We're some kind of apex predator that is meant to dominate all other life, including members of our own species. When in actuality we are so dependent on all other forms of life for sustenance and survival. And not just food either. Plants provide medicine. Woolly animals provide material for clothing to keep us warm. Trees provide the oxygen we need to breathe. See, we're just another wheel in a perfectly tuned machine. As part of the created world, we are supported by forces outside ourselves. It's not like we have to fight every day to obtain oxygen. It's just there. Because God is not a cruel God. He does not delight in suffering. Everything is such that we come at life from an even platform. The oxygen is there for us. There are enough resources in the world to support every creature in its season. But alas, somewhere along the line we chose to be greedy. We chose to affirm our fragile idea of superiority by taking more than our fair share of God's abundance. We gulp it down, we burn it up, we spew it from exhaust pipes, we laminate it, pave it, shoot it out of a gun, hang it on a wall, dump it in the toilet. God made nature to have its processes, and these processes happen in their own time to ensure the optimal rates of survival of creatures across the board, everything that's ever existed. Human beings, however, they swap these processes for excess. We exacerbate the natural cycle to the point of chronic imbalance without realizing whose garden bed we might be stomping in. Human beings are not apex predators. We're certainly not at the top of the food chain. We're the gardeners, the vine dressers, as Jesus puts it, modelled after God, the vine dresser, par excellence. I am the true vine, says Jesus, and my Father is the vine dresser. Because although the Creator cannot be a creation himself, because by virtue of a triune existence, God's essence is moulded into that which walks with or abides in creation. Jesus, the Son. The duty of vine dresser is primarily God's, but as his essence abides with creation, everything that is created carries such a duty as well, each in its own unique permutation on a theme. And by each living thing tending to its vine, so does every other thing become a vine as well. Likewise, Jesus identifies himself as a vine, but the true vine, the vine with distinct, intimate knowledge of the vine dresser, his movements, his purposes. He has the wisdom sufficient to recognize the cycle of nature in which he abides, thriving as the vine, tended by the vine dresser, and sustaining the extremities, the branches, just like the trees producing oxygen for everything to breathe. To the trees, we are branches, the recipients of the sustenance provided by the cycle of grace. Trees were so designed to perform an act of grace and mercy by sustaining other living things. And in our part of the cycle, humans, like all living things, have the capacity to nurture trees, to nurture the producers. Everything you see is fine-tuned towards mercy, towards life. When I was told to be brutal with pruning roses, this is, of course, brutality in the spirit of mercy, a knowing forcefulness directed towards a creature's good. What we see too often these days is brutality for brutality's sake. Brutality as an exercise of illusionary dominance over another organism, deforestation and overmining, to sustain not just the needs of human consumption, but the human need to hoard and stockpile to gain an edge over competitors. I mean, after all, you control the fire, you control the world. But God doesn't need to control the world. Jesus doesn't need to control his disciples. The authority of God is in his ability to abide in creation, ensuring the clockwork patterns, the clockwork sustenance of all. The vine dresser present to the vine itself. The authority of Jesus is in his ability to abide with humanity, his wisdom and moral teachings forming the bedrock of the human condition, the search for God in the form we best understand him. We must become branches, for the branches yearn for the sustenance of the vine and the nurture of the vine dresser. As such, if we are to be gardeners, we must come to understand what it means to be pruned ourselves. Prayer is pruning. Worship is pruning. Silence and meditation are pruning, because these bring us back to that relationship of abiding with Jesus. We allow him to penetrate our lives by being receptive to his presence and that of the Spirit. We allow ourselves to remember our place in that much greater cycle. Now, we are part of that abundance, but the abundance exists neither solely because of us nor solely for us. We are just branches of a much bigger vine. We need not be brutal to these branches that surround us, nor the branch that we are. Because the more we try to play the vine dresser amongst ourselves, the more we are brutal to one another, the less we receive from the vine that is Jesus. God is our vine dresser, not us. Allow yourselves to be branches. Allow yourselves to be pruned. If nothing else, prayer is pruning. A life of prayer is a life of abiding. It becomes not an endless pruning, but a regularity of pruning. A regularity of Jesus entering your life. A regularity of mercy at the forefront of our being. This is the natural pattern that abides through all of life, in every cell of creation. We can be the gardeners, but only if we first know ourselves as the branches. We will only mirror the intentions of God, our vine dresser, when we learn that his brutality is out of prudence, is out of care. And we will know the sustenance of Jesus, the true vine, when we learn that the root of this vine is mercy.